Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Lauren Charney to take a stand.
Charney, please take the stand. All witnesses are still sworn in.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
I am Dr. Lauren Charney.
Dr. Charney, what is your involvement in this case?
My involvement is threefold. I observed and monitored the excavation of Jacob Bennett. I conducted a soil comparison analysis of different soil samples, and I determined a range for the date of death of Jacob Bennett.
What is your occupation?
I am a professor of forensic science at Princeton University.
Could you tell us about your educational background?
Yes, I attended Loras College for my undergraduate degree before attending Harvard University, where I received doctorates in medicine, geology, and entomology, all earned summa cum laude.
You said that you conducted a soil analysis. What experience do you have in soil analysis?
In addition to my PhD in geology, my graduate and postdoctoral research included significant use of soil comparison analysis, so I'm very familiar with the techniques used.
You also said that you conducted an investigation into Jacob Bennett's time of death. What method did you use to conduct that investigation?
I had several options to choose from, but I ended up relying on forensic entomology.
For us who don't know, what is forensic entomology?
It is the use of insects and their arthropod relatives, which inhabit a body upon death, to aid in legal investigations, especially when determining the date or time of death.
What is your experience in forensic entomology?
I have served as the vice chair of the American Board of Forensic Entomologists, as well as the editor-in-chief of the American Forensic Journal. I also won the prestigious William S. Harvey Award for outstanding achievements in entomology.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense offers Dr. Lauren Charney as an expert in the area of forensic science, including soil analysis and forensic entomology.
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
We're considering an expert in those areas.
Dr. Charney, you told us that you oversaw the excavation of Jacob Bennett's body. How did you become involved in that?
Detective Lee Giordano called me and explained that they were investigating a potential homicide at Calkins Cliffs, the home of a highly endangered, federally protected scarab beetle. Detective Lee Giordano needed my supervision as a nationally recognized entomologist to make sure that these beetles weren't harmed.
What did you observe at the excavation?
I observed the police dig up River Bluff State Park. I was there when the police pulled out a large, blood-stained duffel bag, which contained a body inside. The bag had been covered in about 8 to 12 inches of loosely packed dirt. It didn't take long for the police to identify the body as that of Jacob Bennett.
I want to talk to you about your soil analysis. How did you go about conducting that analysis?
I compared soil samples from Jackie Owen's car to mud from Calkins Cliffs.
What did you find?
I found that the soil from Jackie Owen's car is consistent with the mud from Calkins Cliffs, but I also believe that the soil from Jackie Owen's car could have come from numerous other places. A few examples being beaches, a construction site, or baseball fields.
With that in mind, could you conclude that the mud found in Jackie Owen's tires came from the dirt where Jacob Bennett's body was buried?
No, and I do not believe that any competent geologist could draw that conclusion with any degree of certainty.
I'd like to switch gears and talk about your investigation into Jacob Bennett's time of death. You said that you used forensic entomology. How did you use that to conduct your investigation?
I found several insects on Jacob Bennett's body, primarily Calliphora terranova, or the North American blowfly. I placed half of these insects in a solution of 80% ethanol, essentially freezing their age. The other half I placed in a container with a piece of raw liver, so I could observe and measure their life cycles.
Could you tell us about the life cycle of a North American blowfly?
Yes. As soon as these blowflies smell the decay, they descend upon the corpse, and within minutes, the mothers lay eggs. This process is called oviposition. After 1 day, the larval stage begins. The third and final larval stage begins after about 4 to 5 days. After 9 to 13 days, the post-larval stage occurs, and after 19 to 25 days, the puparia, the final stage, begins.
What did you find when you examined the bugs on Jacob Bennett's body?
It was evident that the oldest blowflies had reached the post-larval stage, but had not yet become puparia.
Did you come to a conclusion as to Jacob Bennett's date of death?
Yes.
What is that conclusion?
I can state to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that oviposition began between 13 and 19 days before Bennett's body was found. Assuming that oviposition began almost immediately upon death, I place the date of death of Jacob Bennett between June 20th and June 26, 2008.
Your Honor, at this time I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I begin?
Amen.
Now, Dr. Charney, isn't it true that you stated that the mud that you found at the Calkins Cliff matched that of the mud you found on Miss Owen's Maserati?
No, I stated that it was consistent.
So it was consistent with it?
Correct.
Now, you performed 4 different tests that all determined that it was consistent, didn't you?
That is correct.
You performed a test for the level of calcium carbonate.
That is correct.
You performed a test for the amount of rounding of the dirt,
Correct.
the amount of sorting,
Correct.
and the grain size.
Yes.
And all 4 of those tests matched.
It was consistent, yes.
So, okay. Now, you stated that that mud could have come from several other places,
Yes.
such as a baseball field.
Correct. The chalk on the baseball field.
Okay, but isn't it true that you never actually tested a baseball field in your investigation?
Well, calcium carbonate is located in the chalk on baseball fields.
Objection non-responsive, Your Honor.
Oh, you can't object to your own question, so that objection is going to be overruled.
Your Honor, I was objecting to the witness's non-responsive answer.
Well, that's improper, so overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, isn't it true that you never tested a baseball field?
Well, there was no need to, as I already knew that the chalk on baseball fields is consistent with calcium carbonate that was located in Jackie Owen's car.
So, directing you back to my question, the answer is no.
That is correct.
And now you also said that it could have come from a construction site.
Correct.
But again, you did not test any construction sites, did you?
And again, there was no need to.
But you did not test any, did you?
Correct.
And likewise, you said it could have come from a beach,
Correct.
but you never tested any beaches.
No.
And isn't it in fact true that the only place that you tested where all 4 of those tests demonstrated that the mud was consistent was the Calkins Cliff?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, now let's talk about your findings about Jacob Bennett's date of death. Now, you performed 3 different tests, didn't you?
Yes, I performed body decomposition. Actually, that is not correct. I did not perform body decomposition, as Dr. Ooms had already analyzed that. I did perform the other 2, which is vitreous potassium and forensic entomology.
Okay, and Dr. Ooms' examination of body decomposition found that Jacob Bennett's date of death was at the farthest June 16th.
That is correct.
Okay, and you state that if Dr. Ooms' assumptions are correct, that you would agree with his finding.
Yes, but I also have 3 main objections to his work.
Your first objection is that if Jacob Bennett was buried even a day or 2 after he was killed, then Dr. Ooms' assumptions his findings would be incorrect.
Yes, that is correct.
But you're not aware of any evidence that Jacob Bennett was actually buried a day or 2 later, are you?
No.
And likewise, you stated that your second objection is the fact that that June 16th is the latest possible date according to Dr. Ooms' analysis.
Yes, and the fact that it's the latest and also the last date on his range, it raises red flags.
But isn't it true that all the dates in the range are still valid dates?
Yes, but let me explain to you that the range for the date of death should graph as a bell curve, and since June 16th is at the end of that bell curve, it is practically unlikely that Jacob Bennett died on that date.
So after all that, the simple answer is yes, they're all valid dates.
Yes, it is possible.
Okay, now let's talk about the second test, the one that you performed. Now, that was measuring the level of potassium in the vitreous humor of Jacob Bennett's eyes.
That is correct.
And the level of potassium in Jacob Bennett's right eye indicated date of death of June 14th.
Yes, it did.
And the level in his left eye indicated date of death of June 16th.
That is correct.
And isn't it true that the margin of error for that calculation, for that type of measurement, is 2 days?
Correct, plus or minus 2 days for each
So
eye.
June 16th is within the measurement of error for both eyes.
Yes.
And isn't it true that that type of variation between the eyes isn't unusual, is it?
It isn't unusual, but it also shows the imprecise nature of that testing.
And in fact, based on those 2 tests, you would agree with me that the majority of scientists would state with 95% certainty that Jacob Bennett died on June 16th.
If that was the sole evidence that they had, yes.
So directing you back to my question, they would agree with 95% certainty to that.
Yes.
Okay, so now you finally went on and you performed a third test, the forensic entomology test, didn't you?
Correct.
And now, Your Honor, permission to approach the witness?
Granted.
What is this, Dr. Charney?
This seems to be my article that I wrote for News Weekly.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of it?
Yes.
And are you familiar with it?
Yes, I wrote it.
Your Honor, at this time I would move to enter State's Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Consent.
Now, isn't it true that you believe that these standards contained in that article are the minimum standards for a competent forensic entomology test? Isn't that true?
Yes.
All right, now please read along silently with me while I read aloud from this. Don't think that you can be an expert on every locale. Always consult local experts when working in regions with which you are unfamiliar. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
But isn't it true that you did not consult a single local expert in your investigation?
That is not correct. I did consult Detective Lee Giordano.
Isn't it true that you did not consult a single local expert about forensic entomology in your investigation?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, now please read along silently with me while I read aloud from this. Do recognize the considerable additional air introduced when a body is killed at night or discovered after significant precipitation. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
But isn't it true that you didn't add on any additional margin of error for Jacob Bennett being killed at night?
I had no idea that he was killed at night.
But if he was killed at night, that would introduce considerable additional error to your calculations, wouldn't it?
There was no way that I could account for that in my conclusions, as I had no
Directing
idea.
you back to my question, isn't it true that if he was killed at night, there would be an additional considerable margin of error?
That is correct.
And isn't it also true that you did not account for any additional margin of error for the fact that there was significant precipitation in Midlands in June?
I did not, as I had no idea how that would account in my conclusions.
But again, you didn't add on any margin of error for that, did you?
That is correct.
Now, please read along silently with me while I read aloud from this. Don't assume that the environmental temperature at the time the body was found was the temperature for the entire duration of the body's presence at the site in question. Temperature variations, even in a specific area, during a relatively short period of time, can dramatically affect entomological conclusions. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
But isn't it true that you did not, in fact, know, that you do not know what the temperature was at that specific spot during that time period?
I did measure the temperature at the time that Jacob Bennett's body was found, and I found that it was 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I did create an average temperature for the duration of the time that Jacob Bennett's body was in the ground, and I found that the average temperature was 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
But you don't have evidence to prove that that 70 degrees Fahrenheit is accurate, do you?
It's an average.
But you, again, directing you back to my question, you can't prove that 70 degrees is accurate, can you?
Not 100% accurate. It may have been a degree up or a degree
All right.
down.
Now, isn't it also true that the area where they found Jacob Bennett's body was in a heavily shaded area next to the Calkins Cliffs?
That is correct.
And isn't it also true that because of that, you suspect that the temperature may have been several degrees colder than the normal equation that you used to calculate the temperature?
It may have been.
But you didn't account for that, did you?
I had no idea how that would account in my conclusions.
But you did not account for it, did you?
No, I did not.
Now, isn't it also true that if the temperature was lower, that would slow blowfly development?
That is correct.
And isn't it also true that that slow development would make Jacob Bennett's date of death earlier than you'd concluded?
Maybe. I had no idea how temperature, how many
Dr.
days lower.
Charney, isn't it true?
Your Honor, opposing counsel is interrupting my witness.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
What's the basis of that objection?
Your Honor asked that he not berate the witness as he's trying to explain his...
I don't think he's berating the witness. Your objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Isn't it true that you stated in your witness statement that a lower temperature would slow the level of blowfly development?
That is correct.
And that slow development would make Jacob Bennett's date of death earlier than you had otherwise concluded?
Yes, maybe a day or two earlier.
Well, isn't it true in your affidavit that you don't state any specific amount of days that would make it earlier, do you?
That is true.
So you don't say that would be 1 day or 10 days?
That is true. I don't state that in my affidavit.
All right, now please read along silently with me while I read aloud from this. Don't let other crime scene investigators or anyone else influence your analysis. A forensic entomologist is only valuable because he or she provides evidence independent of other fields. When we allow ourselves to be tainted by others' information, opinions, or even their well-intentioned hopes for the results of our work, we cease to be effective. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with State's Exhibit 4?
Granted.
It's the deposition. Now, this is Dr. Oom's deposition, is it not?
Yes.
And you're familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move to enter the State's Exhibit number 4 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
It'll be entered.
Now, please read along silently with me while I read aloud from Dr. Oom's deposition. The question was, did you have any other concerns about Dr. Charney's opinion? Dr. Ooms replied, yes. Dr. Charney did not attend the autopsy and only saw the body long enough to collect larvae and obtain a sample from Bennett's eyes. I also take exception to Dr. Charney's procedure. A pathologist, like any other scientist, starts with an open mind and fills in the blanks with actual evidence in an effort to reach a conclusion. Dr. Charney appeared to begin with a conclusion and then tried to prove it. Did I read that correctly?
That is what Dr. Oom stated, but that was not the case.
All right, but isn't it true that you're being paid $1,000 an hour in this case for your lab work?
Yes, I am.
And you're being paid $1,500 an hour to testify here today.
That was the arrangement.
And isn't it also true that Jackie Owens hired you for the specific purpose of determining Jacob Bennett's date of death?
Yes, that is true.
All right, now let's talk about your forensic entomology investigation. Now, you stated that you found the blowflies in the post-larval state, correct?
On Bennett's body, yes.
Yes, and that they had not yet entered the puparia state.
That is correct.
And based on that, you stated that Jacob Bennett had to have died somewhere between 13 and 19 days before his body was found, correct?
Correct, because the latest state at which post-larval stage could have occurred is 13 days before oviposition, and the earliest date that puparia could have occurred is 19 days before oviposition.
Okay, but isn't it true that the puparia stage can begin up to 25 days after the person is killed?
That is correct.
So, in fact, isn't it true that the puparia wouldn't appear in Jacob Bennett's body until 25 days after he was killed?
The puparia wouldn't have been fully developed. It would have started to develop, yes.
So, directing you back to my question, isn't it true that the puparia wouldn't necessarily appear until 25 days later?
It may have appeared earlier.
But directing you back to my question, it might not have appeared until 25 days later.
It might not have.
And 25 days before your investigation is June 14th. Isn't that so?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You're right.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Charney, first of all, is the amount of money you're being paid for your testimony today dependent on what you actually say when you're on the stand?
No, not at all.
Oh. As far as the article you wrote, entitled Arthropods, the Do's and Don'ts of Collecting Arthropods at Crime Scenes, did you follow the rules outlined in that article when you completed your investigation?
Yes, all of them.
On cross-examination, opposing counsel asked you extensively about the conclusions of Dr. Prescott Ooms as to Jacob Bennett's time of death. Were you able to compare your conclusions with his conclusions during your investigation?
Yes, in fact, I have an illustration that will illustrate this for you and further explain it.
Your Honor, at this time I ask that the witness be allowed to step down from the stand and use a demonstrative to aid in his testimony to the jury.
Your Honor, I would object to any new demonstratives being utilized in redirect.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Yes.
This is well within the scope of opposing counsel's redirect. He asked about the ranges of Dr. Oom's conclusions as far as they related to his own.
Stop. I guess the only, as long as it's in the scope of the testimony, it's fine. He can use demonstrative so long as other rules are followed. I guess there's no rule forbidding him from using a demonstrative during redirect. So I'm
Yes,
going to
Your
rule
Honor.
that objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Charney, please join me in front of the jury.
Your Honor, I would ask to move so that I can see the
No
demonstration.
problem. Absolutely.
Dr. Charney, what is this illustration?
This shows the life cycle of the blowflies on Bennett's body based off of my and Dr. Ooms' conclusions. Now, that's why it's labeled Flies Don't Lie. It's just a little joke we entomologists use in the labs. Sometimes entomology can get a little boring. Just stick with...
Your Honor, relevance?
What's your response?
Your Honor, he's explaining how his testimony today affects the case.
Well, I'll sustain. I believe we were getting beyond the bounds of relevance.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, using this chart, could you show the jury how you concluded that Dr. Ooms' range was incorrect?
Even if we accept Dr. Ooms' unlikely date of June 16th, 2008, the forensic entomological evidence still proves that Dr. Ooms is wrong.
How is that so?
Dr. Ooms, July 9th, 2008 was when Jacob Bennett's body was found, as represented here by this red line. According to Dr. Ooms' conclusions, he would conclude that the blowflies on Bennett's body would be in the puparia stage on this date.
Were any of the blowflies you found on Jacob's body in the puparia stage?
No, the oldest blowflies I found were in the post-larval stage.
How does your conclusion conform with the entomological evidence you discovered?
Even if the blowflies on Jacob Bennett's body were minutes away from reaching the puparia stage, the earliest date on which oviposition could have occurred is June 20th, 2008, and therefore that is the earliest date on which Jacob Bennett died.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Keep it stand.
You can leave it up. All right, now,
Excuse me, Your Honor, may I stand to watch the
Absolutely,
testimony?
absolutely.
Okay, before getting to the specific demonstrative, you stated that you in fact followed all the procedures that you outlined on your article, that's correct?
That is correct.
But one of those procedures was consulting local experts, correct?
That is correct.
And you did not consult local experts, correct?
I did consult Detective Lee Giordano.
You did not consult a local forensic entomologist expert, correct?
No, Detective Lee Giordano is not a forensic entomological expert.
Okay, so you did not consult a local forensic entomologist expert to learn if there were any unusual characteristics of blowflies in Midlands, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, so now let's talk about this. Now, you stated that, now isn't it true that on June 1st, according to Dr. Ooms, that could be, that the bugs could be in the post-larval phase?
July 1st?
Or, yeah, actually, I'm sorry, yes, July 1st.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so this white blank here represents them still being in the post-larval phase.
That is correct.
This represents the post-larval phase beginning.
That is correct.
So it could begin here,
That is correct.
or it could begin here.
Yes.
So it could begin here,
Yes.
or it could begin there.
It starts development here, but it ends development there.
But
yes.
it could only begin appearing as soon as here.
Fully
Correct.
begin, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Witness's excuse?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are we ready for our next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Adrian Malone to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
I'm Adrian Malone.
Mr. Malone, what do you do for a living?
Cars, cars, cars. I'm living the dream.
Could you please explain what you mean by that for the jury?
I own 2 car dealerships in State Center Midlands. First is Malone Ford, a Ford Star dealership. Second is the crown jewel of the Malone Motor Empire, the collection.
What is the collection?
The collection is my pride and joy, an exotic car emporium where I sell only the finest motor vehicles, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Aston Martins, Bentleys, and Maseratis.
Are you licensed to sell these luxury cars?
Of course.
Do you have any education or training in automobiles?
Yes, I graduated Miami-Dade Community College with an associate's degree in auto repair. Then I graduated Wake Forest University with a bachelor's in business administration.
Your Honor, this time the defense moves to enter Adrian Malone as an expert in the areas of general automotive knowledge and automotive repair. Pursuant to Rule 702, we've laid the foundation that this witness has the proper education and experience to be qualified as an expert.
Are there any objections?
No, Your Honor.
All right, he'll be an expert in those areas.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Malone, do you know Jackie Owens?
Yes, I do.
When did you first meet Miss Owens?
It was 2003. She walked onto my lot, and after signature Malone wink and handshake, she drove off in a brand new Aston Martin.
Now, did Miss Owens ever buy a Maserati from you?
Yes, she did.
And what kind of Maserati was this?
It was a Quattroporte 5.
Now, could you describe more about this Maserati for the jury?
Of course, it was a 2005 model. It had an ebony exterior with an aluminum trim, a charcoal interior with leather seats, push-to-start ignition, and of course, a V8 engine hidden behind that classic Maserati Trident emblem.
Now, when Miss Owens drove this Maserati off your lot, did it have custom xenon headlights?
It did not.
What kind of headlights did it have?
It would be your standard halogen bulbs,
And what color would these halogen bulbs emit?
a yellowish white color.
Did Miss Owens ever buy any custom-made headlights for you?
No, she did not.
Did you ever install any custom headlights on Miss Owens' Maserati?
No.
No. If Miss Owens' Maserati did not have custom headlights, would it emit a purple light?
That would be impossible.
And if a Maserati had custom purple xenon headlights, would it emit a purple headlight? I mean, a purple color.
It could.
Now, did Miss Owens ever buy any other cars from you?
Yes, she bought a Bentley, and she's come in buying cars for Trifecta Entertainment countless times.
What is your business relationship with Trifecta Entertainment?
I sell them dozens of cars every year. Jackie Owens and Jacob Bennett would always come in and buy cars from me.
Did you observe any interactions between Miss Owens and Jacob Bennett?
Yeah, I did.
Could you please tell the jury about those interactions?
Oh man, they got along great. They were just really good friends. They would always see eye to eye on how they'd use the cars in the movies, and they'd never make a purchase without consulting the other.
Have you seen Miss Owens since the news of Jacob Bennett's death?
I have.
How is she acting?
She's been all torn up over the death. Whenever I even mentioned Jacob's name, she'd burst into tears.
Now, Mr. Malone, in May of 2008, was one of your Maseratis stolen?
Yeah,
Where was this Maserati found?
at Midlands Marina near Calkins Cliff
When did you recover the Maserati?
in June of 2008.
Could you please describe the stolen Maserati for the jury?
Yes, it was a Maserati Quattroporte Series 5, but it was a 2007 model. Navy blue, by the way.
And what did you do once you had found this stolen car?
I called the police, but that's about all I could do.
And had any cars ever been stolen off your lot before?
Yeah,
Could you please describe that for the jury?
it was 2001. Some cars were stolen from my lot, and I filed an insurance claim. The police figured out that the cars weren't actually stolen, and I got charged with insurance fraud. It was stupid, and it's behind me now.
Mr. Malone, are you aware of Trifecta's third partner, Casey Maxwell?
Yes, I am.
Were you able to observe any interactions between Casey Maxwell and the victim, Jacob Bennett?
Once.
Could you please describe this interaction for the jury?
It was 2 days after Miss Maxwell came in to buy 4 Ferraris for a movie scene she was filming. Jacob Bennett came in, and let me just tell you, his needle was in the red.
What did Jacob say?
Jacob said the only people allowed to buy cars for Trifecta are him and Jackie, period. He also...
Your Honor, this is hearsay.
What's your response?
Pursuant to Rule 801C, this is not hearsay, as we are not offering this testimony to go to the truth of the matter asserted.
What reason are you offering it for?
We're offering it to show the relationship between Casey Maxwell and Jacob Bennett. The actual words that Jacob Bennett said are not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
What's your response to that?
Your Honor, this is for the truth of the matter asserted. It is saying what Mr. Bennett said about Casey is for the truth of the matter asserted.
Your Honor, if I may be heard.
Yes.
The statements that Jacob Bennett made, how Casey Maxwell was not allowed to buy cars for Trifecta and that she wasn't a true partner, are not being offered for the truth to show that she wasn't a true partner and that she wasn't allowed to buy cars, but yet to show the relationship between Casey Maxwell and Jacob Bennett.
The objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, what was Jacob saying about Casey Maxwell?
Again, he said that the only people allowed to buy cars for Trifecta Entertainment are him and Jackie, and that Casey was simply a partner in name only, and by his good graces, he canceled Casey's scene and made him return the cars.
Did you ever see Casey Maxwell after that?
No, she never came back into my shop.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Malone, you testify that you own 2 car dealerships, correct?
That's correct.
And this is not, in fact, your first time in court.
No, it's not.
In fact, you pled guilty to knowing use of fraudulent documents. Isn't that correct?
Yeah,
And this is indeed a Class D felony,
that would be the lowest type of felony out there.
but it is still a Class D felony.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Malone, you've been doing business with the defendant since 2003, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you sold Miss Owens her Maserati Quattroporte in 2005.
Yes, I did.
And this was an ebony black Maserati.
Ebony is black, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Now, you did say that Ms. Owens was meticulous about keeping her car clean, correct?
I did say that.
And in fact, it would surprise you if she allowed her car to get dirty and then did nothing to clean it.
Yes, that would surprise me.
Now, Mr. Malone, do you not say that anyone can simply slap in xenon bulbs?
Anyone can slap them in, but
Thank
that's
you,
like...
Mr. Malone.
Oh, okay.
And in May of
Objection, Your Honor. Opposing counsel interrupted my witness. He was giving an explanation to his answer to answer opposing counsel's question.
You know, I agree, it's not very polite, but I don't believe it's objectionable, so your objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
In May of 2008, Mr. Malone, Ms. Owens approached you about selling one of her Aston Martins, correct?
Yes, she did. I was very surprised.
And in fact, she told you she needed the money to repay some bad gambling debts that she had, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what you said.
And in fact, Ms. Owens told you that she felt pressured by the bookies in order to pay back those debts.
Yes.
So, Mr. Malone, you own the collection, correct?
Yep.
And the collection is one of the more far profitable dealerships out of the two, correct?
Yeah, it's the exotic cars, the expensive cars, only the finest.
And in fact, Trifecta is one of that dealership's steadiest sources of income, isn't it?
That's true.
And in fact, you received over $1 million from Trifecta Entertainment, haven't you?
Yes.
And this is indeed 10% of your annual sales.
Yes.
And in fact, Mr. Malone, didn't you say that if Ms. Owens is convicted of murder, that you will lose your main contact person at Trifecta Entertainment?
Yes, but luckily I still do have Casey Maxwell.
But you do agree that it will affect, or you are afraid it will affect your business?
Yes, but come 15 years, I'm back in business.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
Sure.
Now, opposing counsel asked you about installing the custom headlights. Now, is there a special installation process to install these headlights?
Yes, you must retrofit the car. It's a complicated process. Anybody could put them in, but that's like giving a light bulb to a baby and telling them to put it in.
Opposing counsel also asked you that if Ms. Owens went to jail, that you would lose her business.
Yes.
But since Trifecta's accounts have been frozen, what have you been doing for the past 2 years?
I've been living off my 90%.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. No further questions.
Brief recross, Your Honor.
Sure.
Mr. Malone, do you not say that it is still possible for you to slap in xenon bulbs and for them to work?
Yes, I do say that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
The witness is excused. And is the defense ready to call their final witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Alex Grace to the stand.
Mr. Grace, you're still on your oath.
Please, introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, I'm Alex Grace.
Mr. Grace, what do you do for a living?
I'm an actor. I've made some of the highest grossing films in America, plus I've been nominated for an Oscar award 7 times.
Do you know Jackie Owens?
Yes, she's a good friend of mine.
How do you know her?
Jackie first met me when I was making my transition from stage to screen. Since her new company, Trifecta, was still up and going, I thought I could really help her out a lot by signing a contract with them. Then after I left, Jackie rehired me to Trifecta in 2006. I consider her to be one of my few worthy friends.
Before June 2008, did you ever see Jackie Owens outside of work?
Yes, of course.
How often did you see her?
At least once a week. Almost every Monday night since I've moved to Midlands, we've had dinner together. It's a standing arrangement.
At these dinners, did Jackie Owens ever talk about her company, Trifecta?
Well, naturally.
And what did she say about how Trifecta was doing?
She always seemed very optimistic when it came to her company.
And was that true of June 2008?
Yes.
What do you mean that she was always very optimistic?
She said that Trifecta had been doing quite well, and based on the way things were going, 2008 promised to be the most profitable year yet.
Did Jackie Owens ever mention having any financial issues?
No, of course not. Jackie made millions of dollars a year. And like I just said, things were only looking up for her.
Did Jackie Owens ever talk to you about Jacob Bennett?
Yes, unfortunately so. Jacob Bennett really wasn't my favorite of conversation topics.
What did she tell you about Mr. Bennett?
She seemed nothing short of overjoyed to be working with him.
Did you ever have a chance to observe the relationship between Jacob Bennett and Jackie Owens?
Yes.
Please, describe their relationship for the jury.
Jackie and Jacob, the two got along famously. To tell you the truth, I never quite understood the attraction.
Did Jackie ever talk to you about Casey Maxwell?
Casey Maxwell? Yeah, sure. Casey was sort of like the third wheel in that threesome, which was trifecta. What an enfant terrible.
What did Miss Owens say about Miss Maxwell?
Jackie said she was concerned about Casey because she had been complaining a lot lately about Jacob and had been acting strangely.
Did you ever observe any interactions between Jacob Bennett and Casey Maxwell?
Once.
Please, describe that one interaction for the jury.
At the 2006 Trifecta holiday party, which I went to as Jackie's guest, Casey was there and had a little bit too much to drink, so we all know what they say, in vino veritas. Anyway, she was complaining about Jacob, and when Jacob walked into the room, the two immediately started arguing. Moments later, Casey stormed out of the room, and Jacob just stood there laughing. How unprofessional.
Mr. Grace, I'd like to talk to you about the night of June 16th, 2008. What did you do that night?
That was a Monday, so Jackie and I had dinner together, of course.
Where did you eat dinner that night?
Since we'd grown tired of the few fine restaurants that there are to eat at Midlands, we decided to stay in at my villa that night in Sunset Vista. I even cooked the entire 5-course meal myself.
Please, describe how Jackie Owens was acting that night.
Oh, she was in a great mood. Totally calm and relaxed. In fact, that was the night she mentioned how happy she was to be working with Jacob Bennett. As I recall, we toasted him several times that night with 2 bottles of this buff Australian Shiraz that Jackie had brought over.
How long did Miss Owens stay at your house that night?
Well, she arrived around 8 p.m. and left sometime after midnight.
Did you ever talk to the police as part of this case?
Actually, yes.
What did they ask you about?
They wanted to know if Jackie had been at my house the entire night, and which I told them that she had been. And then they inquired on whether if Jackie had been on Casey's boat, which took a little bit more explaining.
What did you tell the police about whether or not Jackie Owens had ever been on Casey Maxwell's boat?
I told them about how a few weeks before Jacob disappeared, Jack and I went to Casey's boat because Jackie had this brilliant idea that Casey should cast me in her new movie. Unfortunately, Casey was nowhere to be found, so Jackie was only on the boat for a couple of seconds before she left.
Mr. Grace, I'd like to talk to you about your involvement with Trifecta. Before you were hired in 2006, were you having any financial problems?
Well, yes, I was, but what is money to Alex Grace? My talent is all the currency that I need.
Mr. Grace, in 2006, who were you working for?
No one.
What were you working on?
Nothing.
How were you getting paid?
I wasn't.
You were nominated for an Oscar Award 7 times. You were part of some of the highest grossing films in America. What happened to your career?
It all fell apart before my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. On the red carpet at the 2005 Oscar Awards, a reporter came up to me and asked me about Hurricane Katrina. And I stupidly ignored my publicist's advice and told him what I really felt. Maybe the hurricane really wasn't such a bad thing. That was it. My sponsorships dried up, and no one would hire me. Literally, the only offer I had was from some Japanese fragrance company looking to film an ad. I had hit rock bottom, both financially and in my career.
How did you get hired to Trifecta in 2006?
Jackie called me and told me that my career was salvageable. I was just happy that somebody had finally realized that my fans were ready for an Alex Grace comeback.
When you were hired, were your financial problems solved?
I thought they would be for sure, but no. Just as I was about to contact my stylist on that season's red carpet fashions, my plan stalled. Jacob refused to cast me in any speaking role.
Jacob Bennett ever explain why he refused to give you a single speaking role in a Trifecta movie?
Jacob Bennett made it clear that he thought I was somehow radioactive and could sink Trifecta before it even got off the ground. He had absolutely no vision, unlike Jackie.
Did you ever get a speaking role in a Trifecta movie?
Yes, I finally did.
When?
It wasn't until June 23rd, 2008, a couple of days after Jacob's mysterious disappearance. I was cast as the lead in Trifecta's new movie, Rocking Leo. It's bound to be a hit.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions.
Anything from the state?
Yes, Your Honor. First, may I inquire how much time the state has remaining on cross-examination?
You have 9 minutes and 33 seconds.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Grace, you and Jackie Owens were close friends, correct?
Well, yes, we were.
In fact, Jackie gave you your big break into the movie business.
Yes, she did.
But after you called New Orleans a cesspool in 2005, your career hit bottom, did it not?
Well, yes. I mean, have you ever been to New Orleans? It is not Mardi Gras every day.
So yes, your career did hit bottom.
Yeah,
And all of your sponsorships dried up.
that's also true.
So you were facing some financial difficulties.
Yes, your point?
So Mr. Grace, yes, you were facing financial difficulties.
Yes,
But then Jackie Owens called and offered you a deal to work with Trifecta.
she did. Oh, but mark my words. Trifecta would have never had a shot at a star like me under any other circumstances.
So yes, Jackie gave you a deal to work with Trifecta, Mr. Grace.
Yes, she did.
So you moved to Midlands in 2006.
That's correct.
And you moved there expecting to get roles in Trifecta films.
Yes, and I did get roles in Trifecta films.
But up until June of 2008, you had not had a single speaking role in any Trifecta movie.
Thanks to Jacob. No.
But then, Mr. Grace, on June 23rd, Jackie Owens called and offered you the lead in an upcoming Trifecta film.
She did.
And you were shocked to get that, to be offered that role.
I was pleasantly surprised, yes.
But Mr. Grace, you were shocked to be offered that role.
Yes, I agree with you.
Because Mr. Bennett was a co-producer of that movie.
He was a co-producer of that movie. Not because he was a co-producer of that movie.
Mr. Grace, you were shocked because Mr. Bennett was a co-producer of that film.
Yes.
And up until that point, Mr. Bennett had prevented you from appearing in any Trifecta movie.
Initially, yes, he did. But according to how I understand it, Jacob finally came around and agreed with Jackie that it was my time to come back and introduce myself to the public
Mr. Grace,
in a big way.
My question was, up until that point, Mr. Bennett had prevented you from appearing in any Trifecta films with his name on it.
You're right.
And now that was the first time you had even heard of being offered that role, correct?
When Jackie and I had lunch together, yes.
But that call was the first time anyone had mentioned the possibility of that role.
No.
So, Mr. Grace, that was not the first time anyone had mentioned the possibility of that role?
Jackie had talked to me earlier and said that Jacob was coming around and said that he had got over it.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You did?
This is Mr. Grace's affidavit. Referring to Mr. Grace, before you testified today, you signed an affidavit, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And in that affidavit, you swore to tell the whole truth
Yes.
and to include all relevant information.
Of course.
All right, now read along silently with me while I read aloud. I'll be referring to lines 95 on. To tell you the truth, I was completely shocked when Jackie offered me the lead role in Rocking Leo. I had known the movie was in the works, but that June 23rd phone call from Jackie was the first time anyone including Jackie, had ever mentioned to me the possibility that I would be in the movie at all, much less playing the lead.
Yes, that's what I said. I'd heard about the movie before. I'm kind of confused about what your question means, Mr. I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten your name.
Mr. Grace, that was the first time anyone had mentioned the possibility of that role, correct?
That I would be starring in Rocking Leo? Yes, that was the first time I had heard of it.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Now, that call came only 2 days after the police had spoken with you on June 21st about Mr. Bennett's disappearance.
Yes.
And you had told the police that on June 16th, you and Jackie Owens had dinner at your home.
We did have dinner at my home.
Now, for the past 2 years, on Monday nights, you and Jackie Owens have gone out to dinner.
Yes.
So, for nearly 100 times, you have attended some of Midland's finest restaurants.
Yes, there's a very small selection. They get tiring after a while.
Now, Mr. Grace, this was the first time in nearly 100 times that you and Mrs. Owens had eaten at your home.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Grace, you also told the police that you prepared a 5-course meal.
That's true. It's my first time ever cooking. Decided to give it a go, but...
And you told them that it took you half the day to do so.
Well, yes, it did. It was my first time ever cooking, and I thought I was talented at everything, but I guess cooking's not one of them.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Now, only 5 days later, when the police questioned you on the 21st, you could not remember a single course of that 5-course meal.
No, I can't. But I can tell you what we drank.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Now, Mr. Grace, you told the police that you and Jackie Owens talked about trifecta.
Did.
And you talked about Casey and Jacob.
Yes.
And you... So, Mr. Owens, you also told the police that there was no one else at your home who could confirm that you were there besides Jackie Owens, correct?
No, you're correct.
Because you had sent all of your hired help away.
No, I decided to undergo this myself. I wanted to show Jackie that I could really cook.
So yes, Mr. Grace, you had sent all of your hired help away.
Yes.
Now, Jackie is usually driven to your home by her driver, correct?
Normally.
But that night, Jackie Owens decided to drive alone.
Yes.
Now, you also told the police that you and Jackie visited Casey Maxwell's boat, correct?
We did.
But Casey wasn't there. So Casey can't confirm your story, can she?
I suppose not.
And as far as you know, there was no one else at the marina who can confirm your story either, Mr. Grace.
The marina was deserted.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. No further questions, Your Honor.
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
Sure.
Mr. Grace, just to be perfectly clear for the jury, was Jackie Owens at your house at 10 o'clock p.m. on June 16th, 2008?
Yes, without a doubt.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any vote?
There will be nothing further from the state on this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
We are going to take a 3-minute recess. We're going to be back again at 20 after. This time I mean 20 after. So we'll take a recess and we'll come back and get right into closing.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I begin?
You may.
A gunshot echoes across the Midlands Marina, ending Jacob Bennett's life. Now, Jackie Owens, the defendant in this case, gambled that she could get away with murdering Jacob Bennett because she was going to kill him at the secluded Midlands Marina. But her gamble has not paid off because we, the state, have proven to you today through the evidence that Jackie Owens is guilty of murdering Jacob Bennett. Now, in this case, we, the state, carry the burden to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Jackie Owens knowingly, purposefully, or recklessly killed Jacob Bennett. And that is what the evidence has done. A reasonable doubt is a doubt that is based upon a fair and rational consideration of the evidence. It is not based upon mere speculation or guesswork, and it does not arise from sympathy for the defendant or from a fear to return a verdict of guilty. And what you can see when you carefully review this evidence is that while the defense has raised several different defenses based upon speculation and guesswork, none of these have the substantive evidential value to raise reasonable doubt in your mind. Now, think back to the beginning of this case. Jackie Owens was making millions of dollars with trifecta, having a huge income, but despite that, she built up a tremendous debt, a $5 million debt. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what forced Jackie Owens to commit this crime. You heard Adrienne Malone testify on the stand that Jackie Owens came in trying to sell her prized Aston Martin because she said that the bookies were pressuring her. Jackie Owens was facing a difficult situation, but then suddenly something offered her salvation. She had a way out of her debts. The dueling lens offer. And as she saw this light at the end of the tunnel, something suddenly cut it off, leaving her again in the darkness of her problem. And what was that obstruction? That obstruction was Jacob Bennett. Jacob Bennett said that he would not take the dueling lens offer. He would refuse to take it, and that prevented Jackie Owens from ever voting to accept it, since Jacob Bennett was the controlling partner of Trifecta and could outvote Jackie Owens and Casey Maxwell on each and every single company decision. So Jackie Owens came up with a plan. Jackie, you heard Casey Maxwell testify to what this plan was. Jackie Owens would have Casey Maxwell lure Jacob Bennett to the Midlands Marina, Casey Maxwell would leave one of her guns on Casey Maxwell's boat in order for Jackie Owens to kill Jacob Bennett. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what the evidence has shown. But again, why would Jackie Owens want to do that? Well, think back to the argument on June 6th when they were initially discussing the deal. When Jacob Bennett said that he would not take it, Jackie Owens yelled in response, "Well, maybe something terrible has to happen to your family. And then you'll understand." And 10 days later, that's exactly what happened. On June 16th, Hunter Baxamusa arrived at the Midlands Marina. Hunter Baxamusa set up her telescope, expecting to see just a normal lunar eclipse, but that is not what she witnessed. Instead, at 10 o'clock, she saw a dark Maserati drive into the Midlands Marina. She saw a woman, 5'7", the same height and gender as the defendant, get out of that car and go down to a boat, but never turn on any lights. Then she saw at 10:30 another person drive up in a taxi, get out, a small man in dark clothing, matching the description from the autopsy that you heard of Jacob Bennett. And then everything went dark. Hunter Baxamusa heard shouts and then a gunshot. And the next thing she saw was that same person who drove in the Maserati, loading a heavy object into the trunk of that car and driving off down the Calkins Cliffs, right into an area that would coat that person's Maserati with mud that matched back to that exact location. Which takes you, the jury, to the fourth principal part of this case, Dr. Giordano's investigation. Now, you heard Dr. Giordano say that he went to the Midlands Marina. He found Jacob Bennett's blood on Casey Maxwell's boat. He found bleach on Casey Maxwell's boat. He found a long streak down the dock, confirming what you heard Casey Maxwell tell you. And then how he went to Jackie Owens' estate, how he found mud that was completely consistent with the Calkins Cliffs. You also heard Lauren Charney come up to the stand and try and tell you, well, that mud was consistent, but it didn't really match. But you also heard Lauren Charney admit that 4 separate independent tests confirmed that that mud was consistent, and that there was not a single other location that Dr. Charney tested that actually matches the mud on Miss Owens' Maserati. That mud is the exact thing which led Dr. Giordano to the cliffs where he found Jacob Bennett's body. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you must convict Jackie Owens. Because the fact is that the bleach in the trunk of her Maserati demonstrates that she is guilty. What Mr. Simmons told Dr. Giordano demonstrates that she is guilty. The mud that led Dr. Giordano to the Calkins Cliffs demonstrates that she is guilty. Your Honor, members of the jury, the totality of evidence in this case demonstrates beyond a reasonable doubt that Jackie Owens killed Jacob Bennett. Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
May it please the court. Jackie Owens lost everything. All because Casey Maxwell cut a deal. Casey Maxwell knew she was facing 20 years to life of jail time. She found a way to cut that down. She lied to the police, she lied to the prosecutors, and she lied to you to save herself. But Casey Maxwell's lies are not enough to make Jackie Owens lose the one thing she still has, her freedom. The state had the burden to prove Jackie Owens guilty of murder. And to do that, they were the ones who made the gamble. They had to hit their trifecta of facts. Like Mr. Weinstock told you at the beginning of this trial, In gambling, a trifecta requires that you get the first 3 horses in a race exactly right in the exact right order. There is no room for error. Today, the state's burden was no different. They had to prove 3 things to you: when Jacob Bennett died, how he died, and who killed him. And there was no room for error. Because a reasonable doubt is any doubt that would cause an ordinary person to pause or hesitate when making an important decision. And today, the state did not and could not eliminate every reasonable doubt in this case. Now, the first horse the state had to get right, the when, scratched before the race even began. Dr. Lauren Charney told you that body decomposition, the form that Dr. Ooms relied on to come to his conclusion of June 16th, really gives more of an estimate than a definitive conclusion. But Dr. Charney gave you that definitive conclusion. He proved to you that Jacob Bennett must have died between June 20th and June 26th, the time when it's stipulated that Jackie Owens was in Europe. But even if Jacob Bennett did die on June 16th, even if you do believe that, Jackie Owens still could not have committed this crime. Alex Grace told you he was with Jackie Owens that entire night. Now, the second horse the state had to get right, the how, barely made it out of the gate. Jackie Owens did not have the means to commit this murder. Lee Giordano couldn't tell you exactly what gun was used to commit this crime. And the only evidence the state found to connect Jackie Owens to the Midlands Marina was common household bleach and soil that could have come from any number of places. That, members of the jury, is not enough to meet the state's burden. Third horse the state had to get right, the who, died on the backstretch. To prove Jackie Owens guilty of murder, the state had to prove that she purposely, knowingly, or recklessly killed Jacob Bennett by shooting him. But the state could not meet that burden because Jackie Owens didn't do it. Of the state's witnesses, only Hunter Baxamusa claims that he was at the marina on the night of June 16th. But from several hundred feet away, in the dark of night, all Hunter Baxamusa saw was someone drive up in a Maserati with purple headlights, get out, and walk down the pier. He didn't think that what he saw was significant, since she didn't tell a single person about it until she saw it on the news, until it meant fame and attention for her. Then there's these purple headlights to consider. Lee Giordano told you that Jackie Owens' car had standard yellow headlights. He found no evidence that she ever had purple headlights in her car. But Adrian Malone told you about another Maserati, a Maserati with cerulean headlights that was found abandoned at the marina at the end of June 2008. Now, to prove Jackie Owens guilty as an accomplice, the state had to prove that she intentionally solicited, aided, agreed to aid, or attempted to aid another person commit this crime. They once again could not meet their burden. They relied on stories from Casey Maxwell that simply can't be corroborated. Casey Maxwell took the stand today, told you an interesting story. She told you a story of a secret office meeting, a story of coded text messages. But as a matter of law, you cannot convict Jackie Owens based solely on the testimony of an accomplice. That testimony must be corroborated by extrinsic evidence. But in this case, there was no evidence of this secret office meeting. There was no other evidence that these text messages were in code. The state wants you to believe that Casey Maxwell and Jackie Owens texted about the murder just because Ms. Maxwell told them. The state couldn't even prove that Jackie Owens had the motive to commit this murder. They want you to believe that she was desperate for money, so she killed Jacob Bennett to sign off on the dueling lens suit. But to prove that, for that theory to work, they had to prove two things to you. First, Jackie Owens didn't have the money to pay off her debts. And second, that if she didn't find that money quickly, she'd be harmed in some way. But Ms. Owens had plenty of money to pay off those debts. She was a partner in a successful movie studio. She owned several luxury cars. She owned a huge estate. Alex Grace told you, things were only looking up for Jackie Owens. Jackie Owens certainly didn't feel any rush to pay off these debts. Just think about the timeline. Under the partnership agreement, if a partner dies, his shares are split up immediately. But if a partner disappears, no decisions can be made. His shares are not split up for the first 3 months. So if Jackie Owens had killed Jacob Bennett to get money quickly, She would have wanted his body to be found and confirmed dead, not buried in some obscure location along the Calkins Cliffs. But even if Ms. Owens was truly strapped for cash, she would not have killed her best friend for money. Alex Grace and Adrian Malone both told you how well Jackie Owens and Jacob Bennett always got along. Think about the other people who did have the motive to kill Jacob Bennett. Lee Giordano told you about the grudges that Joshua Smith, Ronald Victory, even Alex Grace had against Jacob Bennett. So let's look at these possibilities. First possibility, Joshua Smith. He had a grudge against Jacob Bennett. Lee Giordano didn't look into him himself. He assumed that his officer conducted a thorough investigation. He assumed that his officer was completely able to rule out Joshua Smith. He couldn't tell us where Joshua Smith was on June 16, 2008. Second possibility, Ronald Victory. You heard about the threat letter that Ronald Victory sent to Jacob Bennett? Cease and desist, where those near and dear to you won't be able to find your body. Third possibility, Alex Grace. He admitted he hit rock bottom both financially and in his career. He was desperate for fame. He was desperate for the spotlight. He was this close to getting it all back. But Jacob Bennett stood in the way of every single speaking role in Trifecta. And it just so happens that just days after Jacob Bennett went missing, Alex Grace got the speaking role he'd been looking for. The person in this case with the most motive to kill Jacob Bennett, the person with the most reason, was clearly Casey Maxwell. Casey Maxwell used her get-out-of-jail-free card. She pled guilty to a lesser crime. That doesn't mean she didn't kill Jacob Bennett. She got the least out of the partnership agreement. She was constantly taunted and belittled by Jacob Bennett, and in June 2008, she had the most to gain by taking the dueling lens deal. Not only that, Casey Maxwell had the opportunity to kill Jacob Bennett. Her only alibi is a movie ticket bought online. Nothing can confirm that she was at that movie. She certainly had the means. Like the state told you today, Jacob Bennett allegedly died on Casey Maxwell's boat from a bullet that came from Casey Maxwell's gun during a time that Jacob Bennett was supposed to meet Casey Maxwell. The state came before you today and bet that they could prove Jackie Owens guilty of murder. Today, the bet's not money. Today, Jackie Owens' liberty is on the line. So at the end of this trial, think about all the holes in the state's trifecta. Think about all the reasonable doubt and realize that the state lost their bet. Find Jackie Owens not guilty of murder. Thank you.
Your Honor, before I begin, I'll just ask the bailiff how much time for rebuttal I have left.
3 minutes and 44 seconds.
Great. Members of the jury, now the defense has come up here and talked to you about a trifecta, where you have to place all three things in order. Now, it's very curious that they would use this type of a theme, given that it's these exact type of gambles that put Jackie Owens where she is today. The fact that she didn't win her previous debts is what made her go all in on this final debt. And in fact, what we, the prosecution, have done today is show that she lost this final bet as well. Now, talking about the issue of when, opposing counsels called Dr. Charney to try and tell you that Jacob Bennett must have been killed sometime between June 20th and 26th. But you heard the numerous methodological errors behind Dr. Charney's examination. The at least 5 different things that added considerable margins of error that Dr. Charney plain out ignored. Dr. Charney said that bugs don't lie. That may be true, but people do. And Charney's being paid so much that that's exactly what she did on the stand. He did on stand. Now, the second issue is the how. Now, what you see there is that you heard Adrian Malone testify that anyone can slap in xenon bulbs. Likewise, now he said that you'd have to retrofit the assemblies in order for those to work effectively. Well, that may be true, but it's not necessary if you only intend to use them for one night. And you heard Dr. Giordano testify that the bulbs that he found in Miss Owens' car had been replaced just 6 days after. Their date of production was just 6 days after when Jacob Bennett was killed. Members of the jury, the how links straight back to Jackie Owens, leaving us finally with the who. Now, the defense counsel came up here and talked to you about Ronald Victory, but again, the law states that reasonable doubt is not based upon mere guesswork or speculation. What evidence is there that links Ronald Victory to this case? Members of the jury, they have nothing but a letter with a signature that they can't even prove is Ronald Victory. Members of the jury, Ronald Victory is not on the who. Now, the second question is well, maybe is it Josh DeSmith? But members of the jury, the defense doesn't even have a letter from Josh DeSmith. They don't have any evidence linking from him. This is mere speculation. Now, the next issue is Casey Maxwell. Now, the defense said that Casey Maxwell maybe could have killed Jacob Bennett. Well, what you know is that Casey Maxwell has an alibi. The defense said it's just a ticket that was printed off. But you heard Dr. Giordano tell you what the date that ticket was purchased at. 10:02 p.m. on June 16, 2008. When did the Maserati Quattroporte drive into the Midlands Marina? 10 o'clock, June 16, 2008. Could Casey Maxwell have bought that ticket while simultaneously walking down the Midlands Marina dock? No, Casey Maxwell could not. Casey Maxwell could not be the murderer. Now, the defense has left you with a final red herring, Alex Grace. Now, the defense tells you that Alex Grace has plenty of motive to want Jacob Bennett dead. But is there anything that says that Alex Grace could have actually had the ability, the means, or the opportunity to kill Jacob Bennett? Well, only if Alex Grace is lying to you about the alibi that Alex Grace told you for Jackie Owens. If Alex Grace wants Jacob Bennett dead, well, members of the jury, that's the only piece of evidence that the defense has that Jackie Owens has an alibi. The defense has straight up conceded that their eyewitness to Jackie Owens' alibi wanted Jacob Bennett dead. Members of the jury, Alex Grace is so biased that even the defense says that Alex Grace wanted Jacob Bennett dead. What you see is that Jackie Owens has no alibi. We ask you to recognize this and all the evidence and find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to both teams for not collecting ballots. We will get them added out.
I am here with Chris Lyons to announce the closest ever championship round in the history of the Empire City Invitational. And when I say closest ever, it is so close that I am going to have Chris explain to you what we had to do to determine our world champion.
Justin is right. This was quite a close finale. There were 15 jurors. 7 of them voted one way. 7 of them voted the other. The final ballot tied. So the winner by nature of point differential, that is, this team, the ballots they won by a greater point differential than the other team. And your 2010 world champions, the defense.